Hello, and welcome to the first episode of the new season of the Now What Show. I'm your host, Amber Christian, and today I am happy to welcome Elaine Kinney to the show. We'll get to Elaine.
Hi.
Yep, we'll get to Elaine's introduction. She'll tell you more about herself in just a minute. But before we jump in, I have a couple of really exciting announcements for this season. So in season two, we've heard you, we've seen how much you're watching the artisan interviews. And so this year we're going to, or I should say for this season, we're going to go ahead and do a lot more artisan interviews so that we have a deep dive time on those artisan questions, because it's been pretty clear from the feedback we're getting that you love those particular questions. The second thing I want to announce for season two is we have a sponsor this season. So I'm pleased to share that Go Imagine has chosen to sponsor our podcast for this season. This is a company at Handmade Seller. We love this company. We've talked about them in multiple articles that you can find on our website. And so they are sponsoring the whole season for us, and they'll have their own dedicated episode as we go further on in the season. So now, just to share a little bit more about who Go Imagine is. Go Imagine is focused on building the maker community through a handmade marketplace, maker business education, custom websites, and a social app designed for artists called Maker Circle. The Go Imagine community includes thousands of handmade business owners throughout the United States. These business owners are passionate about growing a handmade platform dedicated to quality handmade items while also focusing on social good that's helping children in need. Check them out at goimagine.com. And now let's introduce Elaine Kinney. Elaine, can you share a little bit more about yourself and your business?
Hi, I'm Elaine Kinney. I have a soap business in Portland, Maine, up here in New England. I make soap out of the local craft beers. Portland is known for its craft beer community. There's over 165 different breweries in our state alone. So I have niched down with my soap by turning their beer into soap.
Ah, what's really interesting about that to me. So, when I came across Elaine initially, I thought, soap out of beer? So, tell us a little bit more about this journey of starting to make soap from beer, as I feel like that's something unique and something I haven't seen a lot.
Right. So when I started making soap, it was back in 2018 or 2019, I think. And I have always used beer to make it. So I'm always surprised that more people don't, but I'm not the first one to come up with it. Um, and I was learning from a friend who was she had started a business as sort of a hobby, but was looking to move on to the next thing. And I was in social services for like 7 years before that and was looking to get out of that and try to work for myself as an entrepreneur. So we collaborated and she taught me how to make soap from beer. And I kind of dove in from there.
Oh, that sounds super interesting. Now, the other thing I think that's very unique about your story is how you have grown into these collaborations with breweries. I feel
Yeah.
like that's a really unique thing as well because you're focused on the whole Maine brewery industry. So, can you tell us how that first started and then how it's starting to evolve?
Right. So when I first started making soap with beer, I was just buying it off the grocery store shelves. And it was a great thing marketing wise to be able to tout that I'm using these other small businesses, these breweries in my soap. But when it really started to change, somewhere along the line, I realized that I could be using brewery waste specifically to make my soaps as opposed to just buying it directly. And that became a new, more sustainable way to support other small businesses and boost my own small business sustainability. So it started back whenever I think it was Lone Pine Brewing that first reached out to me. And there was a gentleman that was working there, and he had 3 cases of passcode beer, which is essentially just beer that is there's nothing really gone wrong with it because it's sealed and it's has alcohol in it, so it's not going to go bad. But the flavors, it's more of an overstock. The flavors have just like passed their fresh point. They don't really want to sell it anymore because it's just not quite as good to drink, but also don't want to dump it down the drain. So this gentleman had reached out to me with these cases of beer and said, "You use beer in your soap. Can you use these?"
Mhm.
And I did. And I was like, I have to jump on this opportunity. So I was using this passcode beer for a little bit. And I think I didn't even realize what an opportunity I was sitting on at the time. I didn't realize how common this production excess was.
Sure.
But since then, I've decided to try to shift all of the beer that I use for soap to be sourced from this production excess specifically.
Mhm. So now, when we think about and kind of talk about how do you start to source and do those collaborations,
Hmm.
with the brewery starting to provide the product, do you wait for them to reach out to you? Do you reach out to them? Kind of how has that process evolved for you from that first time you did it into
Yeah.
something that you're more regularly doing?
Yeah, it's a little bit of like a stumbling process as you learn these sorts of things, right? Especially like
Yep.
as a small business owner, when you go into things and you're like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm gonna just get out there and try it. So, like I said, this first opportunity, they approached me. It was, I think, a DM on my Instagram. So it can
Hmm.
be as informal a setting as that, and just following that through. Since then, I usually approach with an email. I will go on the website, and usually I have like something specific in mind. Like I want to make, like, for example, I have a lemongrass shea and IPA soap. So I specifically need an IPA for that one because it fits the name,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So I usually go online and find either a brewery that's a favorite of mine, or just one I've been looking forward to trying, or one I'm excited to work with, or a customer has requested. And I will reach out to them just via email and say, hey, this is my business. This is what I do. You give them your little elevator pitch in an email and say, I would love to work with you. Do you have anything that fits these parameters? And do you have any short fills, or do you have these passcode beers that are overstocked that you need to get rid of? Anyway, I would love to work with you. And usually it's as simple as that. That's really how I approach it. I've had a couple breweries approach me, like I said, first, but it's kind of a finding each other thing.
Hmm.
And sometimes, sometimes it doesn't fit. Maybe they don't do a vegan beer. I have a vegan business, so it has to be
Hmm.
within that parameter. So maybe the beers they make aren't vegan, and I find that out. So I move on to the next one. Sometimes you get ghosted. Everyone in small business
Mm.
knows, in any business knows, you can send out emails and never hear back. So it's really a mixture of those interactions, and just keep pushing out and reaching out to people and pursuing. Sometimes I DM them via Instagram. Sometimes I walk right into the brewery, which is always a little scary, and just approach whoever's behind the bar and say, hey, this is my shtick. Like, can I talk to whoever's in charge of this? I would love to work with you. But I think what's really motivating to me is that we're all members of this small business community, right? So I really want to be interacting and building those relationships.
Mhm. Yes, that's gotta be fun every once in a while, seeing the, look on the face of the person behind the bar when you've cold walked in and said, "Hey, I am really interested in making soap out of your beer. Can I
They
talk to
never
someone?"
expect it.
I know, right?
Never expect it.
They're like, "Well, that was not on my bingo card."
Yeah, absolutely.
But yet absolutely memorable and cool that you show up to collaborate with them, because I
Hmm.
think the other human side of it too for brands is sometimes we can say, "Oh, well, we shouldn't approach them." Sometimes it's a huge
Yeah,
blessing for you to approach them and they're actually really open to it. They just never thought about it
yeah,
before. And so it can be a really beautiful thing to approach them to collaborate with it. Now,
absolutely.
do you get tours or get to go behind the scenes sometimes with some of these brands? Or tell me more about
Yeah.
what that ends up looking like since now you're collaborating with them.
Yeah, so it's neat. So I usually go and pick up the beer. We schedule a time to meet, and I know they're busy and their businesses are probably bigger than mine. So I usually show up, and I just go and say, like, "What have you got for me?" And usually I have no idea how much it's going to be. Or sometimes they'll say, "We've got 2 to 3 cases for you," and I show up and they've got 6 cases for me, and so I'm good for like a while. But you never quite know what you're going to walk into, right? So when I show up to these breweries, I oftentimes get ushered into this back brewing room where there's all these huge, tanks, and things are very much actively happening. And so it's cool because
Mhm.
you get to sort of see the behind the scenes. And usually breweries are pretty open to like let people have tours or walk back there anyway. It's very common to get brewery tours, even as just a customer, like during an event or
Mhm.
something like that. But it's cool because a lot of times as you're helping them just carry things out to the car, they're just like, oh, come on back. And you get to see their huge walk-in freezer stocked with, or not freezer, fridge. And, so you do get to like walk back behind the scenes and see it. And sometimes when I'm just approaching breweries. It's at events for. I recently went to an event at Orange Bike Brewing, which is Portland, Maine's first dedicated gluten-free brewery, which was very
Ah.
exciting.
Mhm.
Um, and they were hosting an event where they had a speaker come and talk in their brewery room with all of their kettles, and it was cool because you're just sitting there amongst bags of malt, and you really do get to see that behind the scenes, which is cool.
Mhm. That's gotta provide you with endless opportunities for social media related to
Yeah,
product development, your production process. It
yeah,
strikes me that this collaboration is really beneficial in a lot of areas of your business because then
hmm,
if you're doing simple things like documenting as you go, as you pick up the beer, as you use the beer and making something, what the
yeah,
finished product looks like, that there's all of these different things that it's like, okay, I can almost create a little bit of a formula for my social media as I go to
yeah.
do a collaboration, thus really simplifying a lot of other things for your business, right?
Absolutely. And it's
Because
so hard, social media strategy, but I think just, and I'm terrible at this, but one of those things where you're just remembering, just turn on your camera. Things are
yep,
happening in your business, just turn on your camera, just take footage of it, and you've got something for later.
absolutely. And you can even really create almost a formula as you go to do a
Hmm.
collaboration and you just start to learn, it becomes ingrained part of your process because the thing that strikes me as challenging is we're wearing so many hats. We have to do so
Yeah,
many different things all of the time. And sometimes the last thing we can do is feel really inspired around the social media side of it and the communication with our customers, which is
that
the
is so
most
true.
important part.
Yeah, that front facing side, you have to have something to present. Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
And then this whole collaboration strategy of just being able to capture it, it could be as simple as sending things out on your newsletter of, hey, here's the latest
Hmm.
sneak peek behind the scenes when I was picking up beer from blah, blah, blah that I'm working on.
Hmm.
And everyone's like, ooh, ooh, I have the inside scoop. And you didn't really have to
Yeah,
tell them all that much, thus making it a lot more simpler to communicate. And so
yeah.
part of what I thought is so intriguing about this collaboration with breweries being kind of the main way that you're doing your business is it can simplify a lot of other aspects of the business so that you
Hmm.
stay sane.
Yeah, I love anything that I can turn into content, you know? So, and I
Mhm.
think it's such a hard thing to stay on top of, especially like you said, when you're wearing so many hats, when your mind is pulled to 1,000 different places between your website and your marketing and your, product design and your own mental health and like just staying on top of everything. If you can streamline it, if you can just take footage of everything you've got, it's fantastic.
Ah, wonderful. Well, do you have any other final thoughts you would like to share with people before we tell them how to find you and or encouragement you'd like to share about pursuing collaborations for someone who might feel a little trepidation? What would you share with them?
Yeah, I mean, that's just the biggest thing I've learned as a small business owner in general. And it applies to collaborations, but it applies to everything else too, is just like get out there and do it. Cause I think we all fight imposter syndrome in such a major way. And the reality is that we're all going to make mistakes. You're never good at something the first time. And if you are, like, tell me how you did that. Um, you're going to make mistakes, right? So the point isn't avoiding the mistakes or like getting everything perfect or making sure your pitch is just so before you ever try, because you can analysis paralysis and then just stop yourself from even hitting send, right? But I think the most important thing is throwing yourself into something, being willing to have some messes along the way. As long as you're learning from it, like you're going to make progress, you're going to improve, and don't let just like the unknown stop you from trying, because it's fine if like something doesn't work out and you gave it your all, but how much more frustrating is it to look back and have regrets because you didn't even try, you know?
Mhm.
So just
Mhm.
I would just get out there, whatever it is, whether it's a collaboration and you're not sure how to reach out, or whether it's just starting your business at all. Like just dive into the complicated stuff. You'll figure it out as you go, I promise.
Mhm. All right, fantastic. Excellent advice. So now, Elaine, tell everyone where can they find you on the socials, your website, how do they find out more information about you and your company?
Absolutely. So there's lots of little places you can find me. Obviously, I have a website. It's whitepinebathbrew.com. And I'm on Instagram as one of my main areas where I show up. That's White Pine Bath Brew. And I also have a newsletter you can sign up for on my website where it just gives little updates on, sales. I do a lot of pop-up events.
Mhm.
And I'm also starting a new blog in a matter of days. It will be
Yay!
launching. And that is a little bit more of the behind the scenes, one on one personal conversational look where you're getting to see some of little snippets of like some of those shots of beer getting handed off in the back of a brewery, or some of the chemistry behind why soap works. You're just getting a little bit more of like something you can sink your teeth into with that blog. And the blog is called Shower Beer and Beer Showers.
Oh, love it. Well, wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us today, Elaine. And
Thank you for
again,
having me.
absolutely. And a special thank you to Go Imagine, our sponsor for this season. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next time.